On the fourth day of Christmas, Bridget brought to me a reminder of the innocence plea. Today we're celebrating Holy Innocence, and that's not as wholesome of a topic as it sounds from the name. We're going to try not to get into any territory that would require a trigger warning, but this is the feast day where we remember the slaughter of the innocents by King Herod as found in the gospel stories. Given the events that are going on in our world right now, we are probably going to be talking about how that is kind of happening around the world right now a little bit. Hopefully not with any graphic detail, but if that's something that you really can't deal with right now, see you tomorrow on the 5th day of Christmas. I completely understand. But we shouldn't get in deep enough to require a trigger warning, but I understand if you're just not in the headspace. I understand. But if you are, and you're going to come along with us, let's talk about protecting the holy innocent today as we walk down creation's path. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I am a Christo-Pagan Druid and priest of Bridget.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I am a Christo-Pagan Druid and sous chef to the Dagda.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Feast of the Holy Innocents. Before we get too deep in, I'm just going to say this very briefly so we can get on to the serious topics. This is a story that is found in the Gospels that we have so far found no historical evidence for, but it is a very good reminder of what is going on in our world and who we are here to actually take care of. It is a connection of the story of Jesus to the story of Moses, and it is a reminder that we are here to help the oppressed, the crushed, the blind. We are here to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord, as Jesus said of his own and our mission, and so we will be doing that. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow whatever the terminology happens to be on the platform you're currently listening to us on. We do original Christo-Pagan and Druid content 5 days a week on this podcast, and you don't want to miss a thing, especially right now, because we're going through the 12 days of Christmas, and we're doing an episode for all 12 days. All right, let's get into it. The Feast of Holy Innocents, in many ways to me, is a story about mindfulness and how to disobey power. The story begins with the three wise men. We say three wise men today. The actual original story just says wise men without a number. We have turned that into three because of the tradition that developed over time. But nonetheless, the wise men come to King Herod and say, we have seen a star that has proclaimed the birth of the Messiah. Where might we find the new king? This upsets Herod. And Herod calls in the people, where is this prophesied to have happened? And basically sends them on their way and tells them to come back and tell him where this child is so he can also venerate the new king. And of course, they have an angel appear to them, warning them, oh, this may not be a good thing for us to go back. And they take a different route back so that they don't go past Herod's palace and ... Herod, of course, goes, well, they didn't tell me where they were, so let's just kill every male child under 2 years of age in that region so I can maintain power. Now, here's some of the things that are interesting about this story. Like I said in the intro, we don't have any historical basis for the story. Herod was not a moral person. I don't think you can call any of the kings and despots and emperors of antiquity moral people.
It was so bad that even when people heard this story, they're just like, it checks out.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at. Yeah, nobody questioned whether he was capable of doing it. They just went, okay. I know that there's a lot of Herod apologia that goes on nowadays because ancient times are complicated. Yes, he did kind of rescue the people from the clutches of Rome. Yes, he was a great builder. Yes, stipulated all of these things. He also, like all rulers of the day, was a cruel, tyrannical despot who crushed any and all opposition to himself, killing his own brothers and children because he felt that they were a risk. It's a mess. It's all a mess. As we've said about the other stories of Christmas, the historicity is not what matters in stories like this. It's what are they trying to tell us? what is the actual lesson we are supposed to glean from them. And as I again said in the intro, Jesus is very clear about our mission. Today, we are here to help the crushed and oppressed. That's part of the mission statement that he gives both himself and the church. This is very much a story about the crushed and the oppressed. It does a very good job of setting the tone for living in occupied Palestine. If you want to know why I keep using the word Palestine there, it's actually because we got our word Palestine from the Romans. The Romans changed the name of the area because of their reaction to the Bar Kokhba revolt, which maybe someday we'll do an episode on the Bar Kokhba revolt because it has some interesting religious ramifications for everybody involved, Jews, Christians, and the like. It's a very complicated story. So let me know in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in us going into. It's much more of a historical thing that we normally do on the show, but I think it's something that could be interesting. When I say that this is a story about mindfulness, this is mindfulness in its greatest sense of the term. Being able to feel the lay of the land, being aware of the situation that you're in. The biggest problem at the beginning of the story is that the wise men were not so wise. And if they knew anything about the Herodian line, you would never go to anyone in the Herodian line and say, "Hi, where is your successor?"
Yeah.
That's not related to you.
Yeah, we've got news and signs and portents of this amazing new ruler that's going to replace you. That is not what you say to them.
Not at all. And there's a certain heedlessness on their part that sparks this entire story off. I think that's very important for us, especially in our modern day, to realize how we often get blinded by our own zeal and our own beliefs that we are doing what is right, beneficial, good, that why wouldn't everyone naturally agree with me that this is the right, beneficial, and good thing and share in our excitement and cause ancillary harm. I know of some people that have been doxxed by accident because of people's excitement. I had to beg and plead some people to untag my home because they not only came over to the house, but then tagged my GPS coordinates on public posts. Yeah, you're excited. You're really happy to be here. That's wonderful. Maybe don't give the drone coordinates to my house. You know what I'm saying? Like no. And it took a while to get them to understand why, like, maybe I wouldn't want the GPS coordinates of my actual home just posted widely online. But that's because in their excitement, right? And they posted the GPS of all the places that they went, right? And by the way, if you have location turned on so that it shows the location of where you are when you post, that's what is happening there. And they didn't think about the ramifications of putting a private residence on blast like that, especially at the time when we were doing some fairly large podcasts and other stuff and had some people very much not liking us. Oh, it was terrifying. But that's just not thinking. You know what I'm saying? That's being heedless and not having that mindfulness that you really need to have. Well, that's not the same as leading to the slaughter of the innocents. We tend to do a lot of these things where we're so excited we're not paying attention to what we're actually saying, sharing, who we're actually saying it to.
There are a lot of examples of this in the current modern political discourse, especially in this country, probably in the others too, because you'll see somebody in a conversation on a specific topic, and then someone else in their zeal for a different topic basically makes enemies out of everybody on the first topic that they probably on the same side on, but because of their zeal and the heedlessness, they just blast forward.
There really is this need to learn to read the room.
Yeah.
Who are we in the room with? Is this something that should be said here?
Because you could see back to our earlier episode where we were talking about Stephen. If he read the room, in his zeal, probably good intention, but his heedlessness, he basically self-terminated.
Again, not saying Stephen deserved to be pelted with rocks until dead, but he did kind of invite it. He did was
Indirectly.
unnecessarily rude and cruel in his remarks. It's not that he got what he deserved, but it's shocking if he didn't see it coming.
Yeah.
We tend to make snap judgments, and while sometimes that is a blessing, I have a fairly good ability to read people. Like when we had to do hiring and stuff, through a short conversation, I would be able to tell whether or not somebody would be reliable or not, whether they would show up on time or not, whether they would try to steal from us or not. And the few times I was not listened to on that, those were borne out. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying this to say how good I am or anything, but yeah, there are some skills that we can develop and certain talents that we can have so that we can have a proper blinked moment, if you will, to go to the Malcolm Gladwell book that was so popular a while back, where you can just make that kind of snap decision. And sometimes, yeah, that first instinct is right. Sometimes they're not. In this world of dogpiling, I am not a fan of dogpiles. I am not a fan of purity culture. I am not a fan of assuming the worst about everyone, mainly because I do assume the worst about everyone. And if I gave into that, I would never talk to anyone ever, because that's just my natural state. And in some instances, we learn over time that stories were made up, stories were fabricated, stories were not exactly what we thought they were at first blush. They were blown out of context. We ended up getting what we thought was a first-hand report that was actually a third or fourth-hand report, and through the game of telephone, events were exaggerated or changed to suit the narrative better. And so we need to be careful and mindful of things like that and try to go to the source as much as possible.
A phrase, a tool that we found very helpful that we use often is correlation is not causation. We'll repeat that at each other, especially if we see the other party starting to possibly engage in this heedlessness, as a reminder to just stop and remember that just because two things happened at the same time do not mean that they're the same thing. One of the popular phrases is where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, sometimes, yes, but it could be a barbecue.
Yeah.
Somebody could just be cooking.
Yeah.
Somebody could be heating their home. Fire doesn't always mean bad either.
You have to be careful. I get the instinct to protect people that we feel are being harmed and to protect people that we have evidence are being harmed, but also not to conflate any group. And I will not both sides this, but, and I know you're going to say, you just said, but with everything that is currently going on in Gaza, I have much ire for the Israeli government. I have much anger and bad feeling for the Israeli government. I also know that the Israeli populace have been on the streets protesting what their own government is doing and trying to get him to stop. I know that the families of the hostages have been protesting and urging him to stop because he and his troops keep killing them, because that's not what this is about. While I don't see it as much as it's claimed, I have seen people conflate what the Israeli government is doing with the Israeli people and with Jewish people in general. That kind of conflation is dangerous. It is important for us to protect the holy innocents, to take care of and be mindful of what is going on in Gaza. Also, what's going on in Sudan, what's going on in West Sahara. If you don't know what's going on in Western Sahara, look it up. We don't have time to go into this, I think, 50, 60-year conflict over there that is not getting better and is tending towards getting worse. The violence is low still, which is good, but the ethnic cleansing is happening. The settlers are moving in. It's a very similar story to what we're looking at in the Ukraine, but we're not paying attention to it. I think primarily because it's on the African continent and because they're very careful not to let news reporters into the area to really report out what is happening there. But it's about being mindful of that and understanding that there are many conflicts in this world that are bad, not letting that be corrosive to our energy to be able to stand up and fight. I know bad things are happening in these places. I personally do not need to see the footage of those bad things happening. So I do not seek out or look at that footage. And you don't have to either.
Yeah.
I think we're getting to a point, if we're not careful, and I think a lot of people are already there, where we're going to burn ourselves out because we feel like we have to know the names of, the faces of, see the wounded and the remains of the victims of the myriad of tragedies that happen on a daily basis. And we have a sense in our modern world, our postmodern world, and our hopefully one day meta-modern world, that things are getting worse. Statistics are a cold thing, and they're not hopeful, but they're actually getting better. The number of people that are dying in war and violent conflict is actually down. Violent crime is down. What is different now is there was a media blackout in South Korea. In previous times, no one would have known what happened in South Korea, except some people posted about it in Korean, and then other people posted about it in other languages, and the word leaked out. And it got onto Blue Sky in this very ground up sort of way when most people did not know what was going on. That coup happened in the middle of the night. Most people had no idea what was going on because part of the coup was a media blackout. Thanks to social media and the internet and this change that we're going through, we hear about things that we used to never hear about. Sometimes because they happened halfway around the world, sometimes because they happened in a small town that doesn't get covered in the news. For 1,000 reasons, there are things that we didn't hear about in the past. And it's overwhelming because I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, even with CNN and kind of nascent Fox News, like 24-hour news was new when I was young. We barely had an idea of what was going on anywhere in the world because no one was really covering it. If we were actively engaged in bombing somebody and they needed to get some kind of weird patriotic experience, in the country, they really didn't talk about what was going on anywhere else. And so we just didn't know. We didn't have access to that information. This is the double-edged sword of the age that we live in now, is we now know what's happening in these different places that we wouldn't have known about before because that information is able to literally leak out through social media and get our attention. For those of us who want to make a change, who want to make things better, we get wrapped up in all of them. And here's the sad truth. As an individual, I have very little say about what happens in my government. As a group, we have some more say of what happens in our government, but until we get money out of politics in our country, Raytheon and the various weapons manufacturers are going to have a lot more say than we ever will. And that sucks. That's terrible, and I hate it. But we need to focus on how we are actually wanting to save these innocent people, whether it's people being persecuted in our own country or in any other country on earth. There is a desire to focus in, especially when all the news of the tragedies are happening in a particular country. But maybe if we weren't the arms manufacturer for the world, I'm sure they'd probably find weapons somewhere else, but they would at least not be weapons we gave them. Maybe that's a way, something we can unite on and actually affect more of these issues around the world. I don't know what the solution is here. I'm sorry. I'm not here to tell you this is the right answer. This is the way to go forward. But I don't think sitting down and writing 500 emails of, dear sir or madam in my senator's office, this horrible thing happening in this country needs to stop and we need to do this to send. Dear sir or madam, this is the horrible thing happening in this other country. Just sitting there and just sending out 1,000 emails, sending out 1,000 messages on 1,000 crises, I don't feel like is a focused, mindful solution to our problem. And we need to start finding ways to have a more holistic view of how can we bring about a greater sense of peace, compassion, and justice making so that we are actually doing better.
This is where I like to look at the myth of Sisyphus. We can sit there and try to push that boulder up the hill. It's so big, it's just going to roll over and crush us and roll back to the bottom, and then we're going to have to take time to heal and then try to push it back up the hill again. Or we can remember that this is an important thing and watch for those opportunities. Maybe the opportunity is building the bulldozer and a bunch of us operating the bulldozer and pushing the thing up to the top of the hill and getting the job done. Maybe the thing is waiting for the elevator to come along and pushing it onto the elevator, the lift that will carry it up the hill. Any number of things could be the possibilities. And that's why there isn't an answer. The answer is that mindfulness, that being aware of what you can do and when those opportunities are in your favor.
The closest thing I have to any kind of an actual answer for how we can actually help holy innocence in our world today is not what anyone wants to hear. It's not even what I want to hear, because it's a long-term solution. And these are immediate problems.
Yeah.
And I get the cognitive dissonance there, but the long-term solution is organizing. We're going to have to build ground up, community-based support for local problems that we have, and also for these larger problems where we have that philosophical underpinning that, maybe we shouldn't be the world police. Maybe that is problematic, actually, and something we shouldn't be doing. Maybe we shouldn't be just gifting weapons to some of the worst people in the world and allying with despots and dictators because it gives us some perceived advantage in some perceived game that rich people are playing with each other. That's a long-term fix. But if we're going to have any lasting change, that is the real work that we need to be doing. And it's not just being online and having these conversations here. It's however you're doing, building your grove, building your coven, building your church, building a social institution of some sort that has ground roots, effective abilities, so that from the dog catcher all the way up to the president, we are electing people that have these values and these ideas that we want to see reflected in our government. And it's a civic responsibility and a duty upon us who are told that we must bring the kingdom of heaven on earth, that we are here to instill this idea of justice, where we are not in the final days meeting our Lord and being told that when he was hungry or thirsty or naked or imprisoned or sick, we didn't visit, we didn't help, we didn't give food and clothing and shelter and relief from suffering from imprisonment or illness, that we weren't there to help. These are the commissions we are actually given. That's not something that we as individuals can help in a systemic way unless we come together and really make that our focus and our goal and build that culture from the ground up.
This is why I really liked your answer of mindfulness,
Yeah.
of not giving into heedlessness, because even in organizing, there are groups out there that started, or at least claimed, to have very good aspirations. They were thinking of the children. They wanted to help protect the innocent. But these groups now are running around trying to ban all kinds of books, and way off topic, they're hurting children. Quite a few of these groups out there now are politically actively hurting children because of heedlessness, because they lost the focus.
And just to call one out by name, because please stop supporting them. Autism Speaks is not a good organization. They support a lot of therapies that are harmful to children, that are dangerous for children, that can cause further problems in autistic children. And their end goal is to completely get rid of all of the people that have autism. They want to get rid of us. And yeah, okay, maybe if we find a way to have a non-eugenics future where we can somehow figure out how to stop neurodivergence, okay, but I don't think that it's necessarily just things that are in the water, because I look back and I'm sorry, but St. Thomas Aquinas was very autistic and they didn't have a lot of the things that you're trying to blame on things.
Well, even if you take a very engineering perspective, we don't have the technology to sit there and open up somebody's head and rewire their brain like a circuit board to go, here, it's fixed.
I wouldn't want to do that.
And is that really a good thing? Probably not.
But it's losing the thread. Like, I get the instinct.
Yeah.
I don't want people to have to struggle. I get it. I really do. I get it. But you lost me at eugenics is never good.
It's that heedlessness again. It's like going, yes, yeah, nobody likes a storm, but weather is so important. Without weather, life would be rough, basically impossible.
And so we have to find ways to organize better, because this idea, this rugged individualism that we have developed in our country and that I've seen kind of propagated throughout the world is a dangerous idea. I alone can do nothing. You alone can do nothing. Lone singular action is never, ever gonna solve anything. And that's a hard thing to accept. I remember when I was young, I didn't want to hear that, but that's because I was blind. I was looking at, but this person spoke out and this person spoke out, and they had a movement behind them.
Once again, if we're supposed to be following Christ's example, Christ didn't do that by himself.
Yeah. Nobody did.
Nobody did.
Nobody did. I remember being raised in this great man history of like, look at all the things that Martin Luther King Jr. did. Yeah. And, oh, did you miss all of the people in that picture of him giving the speech? Like, they filled them up, like they just stretched out as far as the eye could see, because it wasn't just him. It was a large movement. We lose sight in the focus on the one person. And yeah, it might take the one person to say the right thing, to start the catalyst going, right? To put the enzyme into the milk to make the cheese, just, it might take that one person, but it's actually that movement, that group that coalesces, that actually gets it done. And if we're not trying to build those groups, we are going to be ineffective, and we're not going to be doing anything to help the many innocent people that are suffering and struggling in this world. It's going to take some hard choices on our part, because we have to get away from the purity tests. Look, I've talked a little bit about politics on this podcast. I try not to get into it too much, but I am an anarchist at heart. I do not believe in leaders. I don't think that there's ever a place for a leader. A facilitator, maybe, but it's a temporary position. They rise up, they fulfill the role that they were needed for, and they go away. Like, I do not believe in leaders, rulers, like king's bad. I don't fault people that don't agree with me. I'm willing to work with people that don't agree with me. And I'm starting to see, especially in the wake of the election, these purity tests coming in of people not being sufficiently this, that, or the other.
This is that heedlessness coming back around again, where their intentions may have been good, but the heedlessness is leading them down a destructive path.
If we're actually going to protect the innocent.
These are the three wise men running back to Herod, going to Herod and basically going, "Hey, dude, your successor's here. Congratulations." And Herod going, "Oh, yes, tell me more," as he's sharpening the blade.
Yeah. It's...
We knew those three wise men would have been killed if they had gone back through there. That's one of the stories of how Herod dealt with things.
We have to get better at organizing. I get the pain, I get the frustration, I get the desire for immediate action, because I do think that these systems have been designed to drag their feet so that the moneyed interest can get as much money out of the system as it can before it gets shut down.
Generally more comfortable and easier to just ignore a thing and hope it goes away, or is no longer your problem, because we're only here for so many years, and after those years are done, it's not our problem anymore.
Well, outrage is useless. This is how we're going to end this episode. I'm sorry, it's a little bit of a downer, but outrage is useless. We get outraged. We get enough people outraged, and we think that that's going to cause change. And they know all they have to do is wait for that mass outrage to die down, and they don't have to change it. George Floyd was murdered, and I can say that because he was convicted. I'm not going to say the name of the guy who did it, because he doesn't deserve to be remembered. But we were outraged. We talked. We did our thing. Nothing changed. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. I could keep going on a litany of names and be here until the new year and beyond, probably through to the end of next year, naming all of the people that we've had the outrage cycle on. And that's not even just going through police things. I can go through all the people that have died in school shootings or what have you, right? The name of victims of violence is a never-ending list that every time I would think I was done, so you can just hand me a piece of paper with more names. Like, it's never-ending. You can just keep naming. But the people in power know that outrage is a fire that will burn out. And so that all they have to do is wait. And they wait and don't have to change a thing. They don't have to change a thing about how we're supporting despotic regimes around the world. They don't have to do anything about our torture policy. They don't have to do anything about how we treat people in prisons. They don't have to do anything about the healthcare system. Go on and on and on and on. The outrage flare up, and they just have to wait. People will get tired, and it'll go away. They get distracted, and it'll go away. This is why organizing on principles is our only way forward. If we're not doing that, if we're just relying on the outrage, we're not going to do anything, get anything done.
This is where I like to look at Star Wars, mythically speaking, when they warn the power of the dark side is tempting, but it is fleeting. Yeah. It's quick power, but it is not lasting. Or for those maybe into automotive and racing and stuff, that shot of nitrous is a quick boost, get you going. But you know what? If you try to burn that in the car the whole race, you will burn up, the engine will melt, and the car will stop. It'll shut down. It'll crash. Race will be over before you can get to the finish line.
So let us know in the comments, how are you organizing? How are you bringing people together to bring about long-lasting change? Ground up change. I would love to know, because I know some of you have hinted at and or mentioned some of the work that you're doing. Let us know in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say that you can leave a comment, they won't let us know. So you leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then go over to creationsfast.com, click on chat, and you can leave a comment there, and we will get notified and be able to reply to you. I would love to know what y'all are doing. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars you can pass our way, you can think about joining a membership. We have both monthly and annual memberships over there. You can also support us on Ko-fi or Patreon. I am C.E. Dorset on both. And that money really does help us keep the lights on, keep food on our table, and a roof over our heads. Thank you so much to everybody who does that, including our latest annual member. And yeah, if you don't have any money, I feel you. I feel you. Don't worry about it. Take care of yourself. But if you happen to know somebody that you think will like what we're doing, please share it with them. Really does help out a lot. It's amazing seeing this podcast grow. And a lot of that has to do with y'all sharing it. Y'all are amazing. And thank you so very much. And as we're on the way out, oh, blessed Bridget, who taught us how to king as you held the body of your son, who kinged over all of your children who were taken away from you through violence, often violence that they didn't even bring upon themselves, innocent violence. Help us to forge within ourselves a heart of compassion, a will of strength, and a mind focused on finding solutions and bringing people together in community through song, through dance, through poetry, and through story, that we can actually rise up and protect the community from the threats that haunt us. Amen.
Amen. And a partridge in a pear tree.